Hey folks, today we're going to be taking a look at this 2013 MacBook Air. Yes, we're taking a look at Apple stuff for once, something I don't do all the time. I believe someone in one of my comments asked the question, why doesn't Elmo 3 have anything Apple? Well, I do, but I just don't make videos of it every 5 minutes because there's just not much to say about it, to be honest. My 2007 MacBook and my iBook kind of do their thing in my fleet of machines, and there's not much to say about them. They just kind of, work and do whatever. I do have something to say about this one, however. This is a 2013 MacBook Air. And the MacBook Air was one of the last Apple machines that I really liked all that much. And that's the reason I'm making a video about it, because the current situation at Apple, they seem to be sort of losing it, in my opinion. So I think we need to take a look back 3 years, and even to current models of the MacBook Air that have the same I/O and everything, and just take a look at the last device I think Apple really did well, and that is, at least the last computer, laptop that they did really well, and that was the MacBook Air. As you probably might have guessed, I'm not a fan of the new MacBook Pros or the new MacBooks, and I'll get into that later, but for now, let's take a look at the MacBook Air, the 2013 MacBook Air. This is a Haswell-based machine. It runs on Core i5, one of the low-power ones. I think it's an Ultrabook chip. I can't remember. It has HD graphics 5000, which is unusual to see on a Haswell machine. Usually you see HD graphics 4400 or 4600. 5000, I'm guessing, is sort of like Iris Pro graphics, or it is Iris Pro graphics, I don't know, but either way, it's a different version of the Haswell built-in graphics that I'm used to seeing, which also intrigued me about this machine quite a bit. Now, as you can see, I got this machine used. As you can see, it's got sticker residue right there, and it's got a nice little dent in the corner there, and some scuff marks and stuff like that. That tends to happen to metal laptops. You get these little marks and stuff. The bottom looks pretty decent, actually. What about the ports? There's one by this USB port here you can kind of see right there. The MagSafe connector looks slightly dirty. I should probably clean that, unless that's just scraping. It might just be scraping metal. There's your microphone right there. You can barely see that, if you can see it at all. The bottom there's a vent. There's not much to this laptop, so let's go over the I/O real quick. And I/O is going to be a big part of this video. You get the MagSafe connector, which no longer exists on newer MacBooks and MacBook Pros. It still exists on the MacBook Air, I believe, though. A USB-A type port, which also no longer exists on the newer Macs. You get a headphone jack, Well, the newer Macs still have that, but the iPhone doesn't. You get your microphones there. There are two little holes. I don't know if you can see them that well. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there are two little holes there. On the other side, you have another USB-A port, and you have a Thunderbolt port, which I have adapters for to convert that into VGA and DVI. So I could use this to give a presentation if I really wanted to. Let's open the machine. It's your typical streamlined Apple design. It reminds me a lot of like a 60s aircraft or something like that. Just this anodized aluminum look is nice. And that bezel, I really like the silver bezel as opposed to the black bezel you see on some other machines. The silver bezel looks sharp. I think that looks a hell of a lot better than the black ones. Keyboard. It's your typical just laptop keyboard. It's not super tactile, but it's good enough for most typing. I mean, I survived on one for years and never had an issue with it. It's also backlit, which is very nice. You have a trackpad with a glass surface, which feels very nice. Apple's trackpads are the best in the business, in my opinion. Nobody beats them for trackpads. Nobody. But as you know, I'm a TrackPoint guy. I like the little eraser head mouse thing, which unfortunately a Mac would never have. The screen on this is pretty good. It's your typical size for a small laptop like this, an 11 or 12-inch laptop, typically has a 1366 by 768 display, and that's exactly what this has. So it has that in common with the ThinkPad X series. This is before they introduced the Retina display onto these. It originally came... Now, this model that I bought originally came with a 128 gig SSD and 8 gigs of RAM on the motherboard. This is a machine where, if you're going to buy one, buy it with the RAM you want to future-proof it. I got this with 8 gigs of RAM because 4 gigs of RAM is just... No, not these days. 8 gigs of RAM is my minimum for buying anything like this. So I made sure I got it with that. The SSD, I upgraded. It had a 128. I got one of these Otherworld Computing Aura SSD upgrades. It uses a 240 gig SSD, so it doubles the space almost. There you go. And one thing I discovered when upgrading the SSDs is you have to be careful what you buy. The 2013 MacBook Airs and onward use a proprietary SSD. It is a PCIe SSD, so it's very fast, but it's not easily replaced. You either get the Apple OEM drives or you get the Otherworld Computing drives, like I got here. These are the models. These are the first models you can use. The MacBook Air 6.1. I think that's what this is. We'll have to double check that. So, compatible only with MacBook Pro with Retina display and MacBook Air computers with PCIe-based flash storage. So it's definitely a PCIe SSD. This one actually came with an enclosure, but the enclosure didn't work, and I'll show you why. I had to send it back to OWC because the enclosure didn't work. This is the drive that came in the machine. This is what it looks like. It is, as you can see, if I can get the angle right, is a Toshiba SSD. Now, the Toshiba drives are a pain for both OWC and for me. The reason that the enclosure didn't work from OWC is specifically because these Toshiba drives just don't work with it, for whatever reason. And from watching Louis Rossman's channel, at least some of the live streams, somebody mentioned that Toshiba SSDs are doorstops, and he agreed. So, might be a little bit of a blind judgment here, but it just seems to me like these Toshiba SSDs are a pain for just about everybody. So, yeah, I have an extra SSD. If the OWC one ever dies, I can go back to using this one. So, unfortunately, I couldn't use this as an external. I had to just leave it in the box here, so I'll just do that. So, unfortunately, I sent the enclosure back, and they refunded me the difference for the enclosure, which is very nice of them. Thank you, OWC. You guys are great. At least for your SSD stuff. I haven't done anything else with them, but hey. So, long story short, this has a 240 gig SSD upgrade in it now, thanks to them figuring out how to get a third-party SSD running in here. And there you go. Let's turn this thing on. It still bongs, which is nice. This has macOS 10.2 on it, I think. 10.2.1, I think, is what's running on here, which is Sierra. Boots pretty quickly there, so let me log in here. There we go. As you can see, I put the mixer background and everything on there. I have the dark theme going on. It's looking pretty nice. I have magnification on in the dock here. I have a bunch of apps in the dock. I've got internet browsers in here. You get your Chrome, Firefox. I've got Thunderbird, FileZilla, LibreOffice, Firestorm, Mindtest, ScumVM, Steam, Discord, Skype, Telegram, TeamSpeak. I have the new version of iMovie. I've got GarageBand, Handbrake, the sound converter thing I downloaded, which switches formats, Virtual DJ Home, iTunes, VLC, Transmission, Mac Tracker. Mac Tracker's an awesome app, actually. I really like that one. And I've got, your typical Unixy sort of stuff, Activity Monitor, Terminal, that type of thing. It's just disk utility down there. They've really crippled disk utility in newer versions of OS X, I have to say. But this machine is still pretty good. I think Apple had a golden era that I was a part of that I kind of miss. I grew up with macOS 8, and I went all the way through to about 10.8. before I got rid of my MacBook Pro that I had at the time. And then I kind of missed 10.9, 10.10, 10.11. And here I am with 10.12. Is it 10.12? I definitely misspoke before. I think I said 10.2.1. 10.12.1. See, I'm so used to, like, back in the day when I used to use Jaguar, my G4 Cube. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, MacBook Air, mid-2013. It's the 11-inch version, which I like. I like the smaller laptops. It has the low-powered Core i3, 1.3 gigahertz one. That's why the clock speed is so low. It has 8 gigs of 1600 DDR3, which is nice. And there's the HD Graphics 5000 I was talking about, which is unusual. I don't really see that on many Haswell systems. I don't know if that's unique to the Mac, or if that's a special Ultrabook thing, or what. I don't know. Maybe one of you in the comments will tell me. Anyway, they give you 1.5 gigs of memory for the graphics, which isn't bad. And as you can see by the icon on the desktop, I have the Aurora SSD in here. It used to have a nice little icon that came with the SSD, but I had to format it. And I got rid of that icon, unfortunately, so that's a real shame. There's your built-in display. It's 1366 by 768, so it's a typical resolution for a display like this. There you go. That's about how much space I have on the SSD. I think it's calculating the amount of space. Yeah, see, programs are what's taking up most of the space on there. There's the support stuff and the service stuff. About the system report. Let's open up System Profiler. Alright. So, this is a MacBook Air 6.1. Absolutely. Okay, the audio. So, Apple makes their own audio stuff now, apparently. Apple Inc. Yeah, you used to see stuff like Texas Instruments in here, but unfortunately, you just don't anymore. Yeah, Apple camera. No Ethernet. I have to use a Thunderbolt adapter to get Ethernet. Intel HD Graphics 5000. SATA. Yeah, it definitely sees the Aura SSD. Oh, there you have it. Not much to say there. So how does it run? It runs great, actually. One thing you have to do with these OWC SSDs is you have to install a little update that lets you use Boot Camp if you want to use these. Now, I'm not using Boot Camp because it's raining here in ThinkPads. I don't need Boot Camp on this machine. What's the point? So, but I just tell you that just so you have the information. But as far as the machine, it runs great. What do I think of newer versions of OS X? I think certain features are a little annoying. Like, let's say you download something that's not that wasn't signed to work with. I don't know. I don't know if they're. I guess it's digital signage that is in charge of that. But you have to. But if you, it'll complain at you that an app won't run because it's like not official or something like that, and you have to go into System Preferences, go to Security, and click Open Anyway to make it work. So there's some features that I find really annoying in newer versions of OS X, and they just don't trust the user, which, to be honest with you, having been in IT before, that is a very good approach to take, because it means you'll have less of a chance of screwing the machine up. So that's it. As long as you know what you're doing, you can get all your stuff installed and, get on with it. However, there is one thing I'd like to point out about the newer Mac OS in comparison with Windows that is an advantage, actually. It has to do with updates. And I cannot remember where the updates stuff is. Oh, it's in the App Store. See, they put updates in the App Store now, which makes the whole thing confusing. Final Cut Pro for $300. Jeez, man. Alright, now how do you deal with updates? Yeah, see, here we go. You go to the App Store thing in System Preferences. Now, look at this. Look at this. For those of you who use Windows 10, I use Windows 10 on my gaming computer. For those of you who use Windows 10, take a good look at what Mac OS does. You see that? You see how you can turn automatic updates off completely? How you can have it download in the background or not? Install updates by itself or not? Or install security updates by itself or not? You have options. You see this? This is how an update, this is how every update manager should be on an operating system. It should give you some control of what happens. Even if you never touch it, maybe a technician needs to have it that way. Or maybe you need to have your Mac not update at all because you're trying to image it or something like that. You get control. You get control over the device. I mean, the scenarios I came up with were kind of off the cuff. Maybe they're not realistic, but still, you get options. Are you taking notes, Microsoft? You get options. On Windows 10, you don't. Not unless you dig into the registry, which is... yeah. This, you just get checkboxes. Take notes. This is something you can do in Linux. This is something you can do in Mac OS. This is something that you cannot do in Windows anymore. That sucks. That sucks. This is awesome when you compare it to Windows. It sucks that it's not in Windows 10. Okay. Yeah. That's the one thing, the biggest thing, I think, that Apple has an advantage in the OS over. They still know what they're doing with updates and keeping a consistent interface the entire time. Because I look at OS 10 and the way it's changed over the years, there's some annoying features now, but they didn't give you something entirely new that's just like unwieldy and awful to use and a terrible experience that you have to add stuff on top of to make better. It's pretty much the same. The basic interface has been the same since 2001. I've been using OS 10 since probably 2001 or 2. And the interface has not changed at all, really. I mean, there have been incremental additions here and there, like Launchpad, and Leopard really brought a lot of features to light, like Time Machine, for example, which to me is probably the best piece of backup software I've ever seen in my life on any platform. Things like that have been added over the years, but the same basic interface has been here. This Finder window up here, this whole menu bar, has not changed since the early 2000s. Consistency is a great thing. Apple is great at that with their software. What's going on with Apple now? They are falling short of that when it comes to hardware, and they kind of always have, to be honest. The reason this is one of the last Macs I've really liked was because you didn't really, it really wasn't a compromise. You know, this is truly an Ultrabook. It doesn't have that many ports, it doesn't have an optical drive, but it has enough ports for you to do some basic stuff with it. You know, you can make a USB stick with it. You can plug headphones in and listen to music with it. You can charge it and have stuff plugged into both USB ports at the same time. You know, stuff that's practical and makes sense. I know I think I heard people complaining about this not having an optical drive and not having a lot of ports or a built-in Ethernet jack, but this was designed to be an Ultrabook. It was one of the last Apple hardware products, I think, that made sense. Then came the MacBook Pros with the Retina displays. Those were creeping into Ultrabook territory, but not completely, without the optical drive and stuff like that. I thought removing that was premature. I think the industry's removal of the optical drive is premature, to be honest with you. Because it seems like the trend in technology now is a war to make everything thin. I mean, this laptop is very thin. Let me shut it off here. It's really thin. You could slice bread with it. Just look at that. You could slice bread with this in your kitchen. But yeah, it's a war to make everything thin, and more than ever, that is showing in Apple now, especially this year. The iPhone 7's eliminating I/O in order to make it thinner and waterproof. I mean, that kind of makes more sense to me. But the new MacBook Pros are literally our Ultrabooks, pretty much. They have no ports. They basically have no I/O for the sake of thinness. The keyboard is less tactile now. because they're trying to make it thinner. The butterfly keyboard thing, which I think feels stupid. I mean, it feels cheaper to me than some newer keyboards do. I don't like the butterfly switches at all. I prefer, at least on Apple devices, I prefer traditional laptop keys, which is what this has. And ThinkPads have much the same. They have traditional laptop keys. Ports. Ports are an important thing to the professional. The newer MacBook Pros don't have an SD card slot. You need to buy a bunch of adapters for that. And that that leaves room for a whole market of adapters. And lots of money to be made at the expense of convenience of the user. All it does is make the computer thinner. And I'll admit the display is better, but Apple's losing it. They really are. I truly believe they are starting to lose it. The post-Steve Jobs era is trying a little too hard. There's the touch bar on the newer MacBook Pros that eliminates these function keys up here and just turns it into an OLED display that has buttons you can touch on it. I actually saw an article the other day. Someone got Doom to run on the screen that would go there on the newer Macs, which I actually thought that was kind of cool, but I like silly things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of gimmicks going on here, and I'm not really a fan of the newer Macs for that reason. So I thought it would be a good idea to get one of these, because it was the last real model of Mac I liked. I could have gotten a newer one that cost a lot more, but I didn't want to spend that much money on it, so I got the 2013 model that had a Haswell in it. And I like Haswell. Its performance is good. I use Haswell every day for computing at home here, and I've been generally pretty happy with it. It's very stable, very reliable. The performance is good. Haswell's still great. So I've been happy with that. The newer Apple devices, they're losing it. I could make a whole long rant video about that. I really could, but I don't want to get too much into it. But yeah, this laptop for me is almost the end of an era. It was the last laptop Apple made that made practical sense to me, and wasn't just another gimmick and part of a war to make things thin and sleek and industrial design bragging rights and all that stuff. This was a design that made sense and was practical, and I love it. I'm not an Apple. I'm not a fanboy of anything. Computers are computers to me. This to me is as much of a computer as a ThinkPad is. It's just a frickin' computer. It has Haswell stuff in it. You don't see me saying how great and magical it is. You see me saying, this has an Intel Haswell CPU in it, and I like the performance of that, and 8 gigs of RAM, and yada, 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 yada. You see me talking about this like I would any other piece of hardware, because that's what this is. Don't drink the Apple Kool-Aid. This is just a frickin' computer. It is not any more special than something else other than the operating system it runs. The whole Mac versus PC thing was done when they switched from PowerPC in 2005. Or 2006, whichever year it was. So I just want to comment on that. The Mac versus PC thing, it's not a thing anymore. They're all Intel-based laptops now for the most part, so it really doesn't make a difference. But anyway, that is the MacBook Air 2013. It's a fantastic machine. One of the last machines that Apple has made. At least this design of MacBook Air is one of the last machines that Apple made. That made sense from a practical perspective. You can still buy newer versions of this that have, I think, Broadwell or Skylake chips in them. They might still be Broadwell. I'm not sure. But yeah, MacBook Airs are great machines. You see them in schools everywhere. You see them in a lot of educational institutions, just students having these too. They're a great machine for students. For sure, because of the compact size and how thin they are, it fits perfectly in like a messenger bag or something like that. You see that a lot. Things like the MacBook Air, the ThinkPad X series, they're perfect for students because they're so small. So it's no surprise that you see the MacBook Air in that same category. I like this machine a lot. It's a great machine. Even if you're not a Mac person and you need to pick one up like I did, I definitely recommend the MacBook Airs. I kind of wish I could have bought a 2011 or 2012 model, though, because the models before the 2013 can take mSATA and M.2 SSDs, I think, respectively. I forget. I think the 2012 model can take M.2. So that would be ideal to get that over something like the 2013 model that I have here and beyond, because they use the proprietary SSDs. So if you don't mind older specs and things like that, and you want to be able to upgrade the SSD more easily and less expensively, that's what I would go for. If you're willing to spend the money on the Otherworld Computing SSDs, you can get up to 1 terabyte of these, by the way. So I got the cheapest one. I got the 240 gig. So if you want easier upgradability, I would get some of the older MacBook Airs. If you don't mind shelling out the extra cash for something like this, 2013 and beyond is fine. You know, that's fine. So that is the MacBook Air, one of the last machines that I've liked personally from Apple. I really hope they don't make this machine part of that Thinmore and part of this whole war against I/O. Like, literally, Apple laptops now have some of the worst I/O I've seen. I don't understand it. Anyhow, it's premature. Apple really likes to do the premature stuff. So this definitely wasn't. This made sense at the time. What they're doing now doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So anyway, before I talk any longer, that's the MacBook Air 2013. I like it. It's a good machine. There you go. Alright, that's the end of this video. So have a good one, everybody. Ciao.